powered by Riverside FM.
Powered by Riverside.
Welcome to Unconventional Playbook, the UP. What's up, UP Nation? On this beautiful Wednesday, sunny morning in the great state of Wisconsin, along with the Minnesota Timberwolves win last night, 105-100. Stay alive in the Western Conference Finals. I said last night during the pod, by the way, hit that like and subscribe button. It's really helping our family to grow. I said last night that I had a lot to talk about, some things I was going to say for another pod. And, you know, the one thing I'm getting tired of is the national media when it comes to mid-market teams or small market teams, whatever you want to call it, the non-big market teams. Because I think things get out into the public that aren't coming from the players, that aren't coming from the organization, that aren't coming from the coaches. Things are just thrown out there in the ether. And I know the agenda. See, I've learned how the national media likes to work. So the big thing is, it's been over the last year or so, trade Karl Anthony Towns. Especially when he starts the playoffs. Trade Karl Anthony Towns. The venom is so intense when it comes to Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, you can argue every analyst, every broadcaster, they sit back and they wait for Karl Anthony Towns to have a bad game. They bypass anybody else that's really having a bad game, and they go directly to Karl Anthony Towns. So they couldn't do anything with him when they played the Phoenix Suns. Arguably, he had a really good series against the Phoenix Suns and Kevin Durant. And I think that was disappointing to them because they couldn't start the narrative early in the playoffs that Karl Anthony Towns doesn't show up. And then they played the Denver Nuggets. And he was a big reason why they won Game 7, did a better job than Rudy Gobert guarding Jokic. And so there was really nothing that the national media or whoever the jackals are out there to say anything about Karl Anthony Towns. You would think that the narrative would start to switch. See, my whole stance, and I said it last night on the pod, my whole stance with Karl Anthony Towns is this: dude, I know who you are. I know what you bring. And I don't expect much more out of you. So what are people actually expecting out of Karl Anthony Towns? I know he's a max guy, but to re-sign him, you had to give him a max deal at the time. He was the best player on the team. So you have to give Karl Anthony Towns a max deal. Fast forward to this series from the Denver Nuggets series, not having the best series. And that's when the national media started to pounce. Now, let me be straight. I am not one of these guys that says absolutely not, pounding the table. We can't trade Karl Anthony Towns. That's not what I'm saying. But I think we live in the type of society today where you want things to happen quick, and fantasy football and fantasy basketball is huge in the United States, that you just want to swing deals and make trades without thinking. So my question becomes, for people that are on board in the national media and people that are Minnesota Timberwolves fans that have Karl Anthony Towns fatigue, who are you going to trade for Karl Anthony Towns? Who do you want? Who are you realistically going to get? Now, before you start, Karl Anthony Towns, let's just go over what Karl Anthony Towns' careers look like here. Drafted 2015-16. Okay? Averaged 18 points a game, 10 rebounds, 2 assists his first year. 16-17, 25 points per game, 12 rebounds. 17-18, 21 points per game, 12 rebounds. 18-19, 24 points a game, 12 rebounds. 19-20, 26 points per game, 10 rebounds. 20-21, 24 points a game, 10 rebounds. 21-22, 24 points a game, 9 rebounds. 22-23, 20 points a game, 8 rebounds. And then this year, 23-24, 21 points per game, 8.3 rebounds a game, 3 assists. Who are you going to trade for that's going to give you that? Because here's the genius of the national media. Here's what I guarantee, and you can book this. And you can throw this back up in my face if it ever occurs or doesn't occur. You can book this. If the day comes that Karl Anthony Towns is traded from the Minnesota Timberwolves, where the national media is saying that he is garbage, I guarantee you he's not going to another small market or mid-market team. Like, you're not going to see Karl Anthony Towns traded to the Utah Jazz. You're not going to see Karl Anthony Towns traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Unless something happens over the next couple of months where LeBron comes back and they want to build a super team. He ain't going to Cleveland. He's not going to the Detroit Pistons. He's not. He's not. He's not going to the Sacramento Kings. He's not going to do that. When Karl Anthony Towns leaves Minnesota, like Kevin Love, like Kevin Garnett, like Stephon Marbury, he is going to go to a major market. And see, this is the genius of these national media guys. They prey on these mid-market teams where the fans have no patience. And the organization lives in a fantasy world that they're running a franchise in Los Angeles. And they're not. So they prey on the weak, the impatient, and the stupid. So you're going to give up Karl Anthony Towns, let's say, for a package in New York to play for the New York Knicks. Stephen A. Smith has already said, well, I would love to see Karl Anthony Towns in a New York Knicks uniform. Wait a minute. You were just on the last episode talking about how he doesn't show up for the playoffs. Why would you want him on the New York Knicks? See, that shows you the hypocrisy of what's going on in the media. You dog him on your shows, First Take, NBA Countdown, but yet in the same breath, you say, oh, I would love to have him on the New York Knicks. Of course you would. He's averaging 21 and 8. So what are you going to give back, Timberwolves? They're not going to dismantle their playoff team for Karl Anthony Towns. So inevitably, he's going to end up going to a better situation. If he goes to Miami, they're not dismantling that. Jimmy Butler's definitely not coming back. So who are you going to get? Lakers? Who are you going to get? If you trade Karl Anthony Towns, who are you going to get? Now, there are rumors out there talking about Trae Young. Trae Young is obviously a prolific scorer, can put points up, real small guy, not a great defender, so he doesn't come in with that culture of playing defense. Is that what you want for Karl Anthony Towns? What is he doing in Atlanta? So that's why, I know that trade's not going to happen. Karl Anthony Towns to Atlanta, that's another team that has struggled. And that's not a destination where the national media wants him. See, the national media likes to put out these narratives and direct players to where they want them to go. Heck, they did it to LeBron in Cleveland twice. LeBron fell for the okie doke. When the Cavaliers were winning at their peak, bringing a ring home, as soon as he got that ring, and they didn't get back there the next year, they automatically start talking about, oh, LeBron may want to he wants to head out to La. He's got his production company out in California, and it's easier for him to be out there, And like LeBron James can't make travel arrangements to go out there and take care of his production company. Obviously he can because he's thinking about leaving the Lakers now. These narratives that these national media pundits put out there. You know who the target is now? The biggest target in the NBA? And you can book this. I'm calling it right now. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. Do you know how bad the national media wants him out of Milwaukee? Do you think they wanted the Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo thing to work out? They are praying and hoping that thing doesn't work out. They love the fact that they have another whipping boy, Doc Rivers, who's coaching a team. They want this thing to fall down around their knees so they can get Giannis out of there and in New York somewhere. See, I think they're slick. They think they're slick. Rumors out there, Karl Anthony Towns for KD. KD's 35 years old. You going to trade Karl Anthony Towns for KD? Now, keep in mind, you're giving up a post. And keep in mind, you're giving up 8 rebounds a game. Who's going to rebound now for Timberwolves? You think KD's going to rebound? You think KD's going to get in there and scruff it up and be physical and rebound? And don't give me the Naz Reid stuff. You know what? I love Naz Reid. I'm probably one of the biggest Naz Reid fans there is. I said last night he should have been in the game down the stretch. Why is he on the bench? People say, well, you get rid of Karl Anthony Towns, you still have Naz Reid. Listen, I coach the game. And sometimes people are just happy and good in their roles. Some people are meant to come off the bench. Some people are meant to play 18 to 22 minutes a game. And the misconception is, hey, if he can get these stats at 22 minutes, what would he get at 40 minutes? And it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it does. And it's human nature to think that way. But it doesn't. Some people are just comfortable in their roles. And there is no guarantee that if you start Naz Reid and play him those minutes, those consistent minutes over 82 games. I'm not talking about if Karl Anthony Towns gets hurt and Naz Reid has to come in for a handful of games and start. It's different. It's different. You're talking about an 82-game season of Naz Reid. Can you do that? Is that an adequate substitution for Karl Anthony Towns, who's averaged over 20 points for every season he's been with the Timberwolves, except for his rookie season? Double-digit rebounds pretty much every year he's been with the Minnesota Timberwolves, except for the last 2 seasons. And then he averaged 9 and 8 rebounds this year. Is that an adequate substitution for Karl Anthony Towns? Who are you going to trade for Karl Anthony Towns to keep this thing going? You going to trade draft picks? This ain't the NFL. You need to find somebody that can go with Anthony Edwards. Take some of the pressure off of Ant that can score. Who are you going to get where a team is going to give up what the Minnesota Timberwolves really need to pair with Ant? Who are you going to get back? See, it's not as easy as just trading him. Like the Minnesota Timberwolves, regardless of what happens in this series, they've got this thing rolling. They're in the Western Conference Finals. Don't you want to keep that going? What are you going to do? Trade Karl Anthony Towns and get back a bunch of role players to go with Anthony Edwards? You can't do that. You can't do that. It makes no sense. So you have to have a trade partner out there that's willing to give up adequate compensation for Karl Anthony Towns for the Minnesota Timberwolves to keep this thing going. Guys, the Minnesota Timberwolves may have to run this thing back. Because if you trade Big Cat, you're taking a risk of taking a couple steps back. And I don't think the Minnesota Timberwolves want to do that. They like the taste of the Western Conference Finals. So their whole thing is, how do we get over the hump? See, my trade partner, or who I would look to trade, is Rudy Gobert. I'm not trading a young Karl Anthony Towns. I'm trading Rudy Gobert because he's shown he really can't score it unless he's dunking the basketball. You can't count on him to board heavily in the playoffs. He's not that physical. And he hasn't shown up as the defensive player that everybody said he was. Defensive player of the year. Has he shown that caliber over the past couple years? I don't know if I'm getting rid of Big Cat too quick. I'm just telling you, because I really don't think there's a trade partner out there for him. I like all the other pieces that the Minnesota Timberwolves have, except for Rudy Gobert. Now, I don't know what the trade partner is for Rudy Gobert. I don't know who you get back for Rudy Gobert. I just know that Karl Anthony Towns is more important to us or to me than Rudy Gobert. I could argue that you could play Naz Reid in Rudy Gobert's spot and you're going to get better production. The only thing you may not get is the block shots during the course of an 82-game season. But you're going to tell me that Naz Reid can't give you Rudy Gobert stats over the course of 82 games? See, that's the trade target. But see, Rudy Gobert is not sexy enough for these big market teams. That's why you never hear the trade Rudy Gobert talk. You're always hearing the Karl Anthony Towns talk. Another Minnesota team. I'm tired of this stuff, man. I'm tired of the crooked national media and their manipulative ways. Justin Jefferson for the Minnesota Vikings. You're hearing all this talk about how the Minnesota Vikings tried to move up and trade for Malik Neighbors. I reported that the day after the draft. Go back and look at the first couple of episodes of the UP. And then on my co-host show with Tony Vandermark, Legit Takes, that there were rumors out there that the Minnesota Vikings tried to move up and get Malik Neighbors, who is arguably the best receiver in the draft. That was reported day after the draft. I heard about it. It went away. Why is that coming up again now? The Minnesota Vikings have not signed Justin Jefferson to a contract extension. So they're trying hard to put a vice on Justin Jefferson and the Minnesota Vikings. They're trying to put enough narrative out there in the ether where Justin Jefferson hears a few things and his camp hears a few things where he wants out of Minnesota. See, this is how they work. You haven't heard anything from Justin Jefferson's camp about wanting to leave. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah has come out and said, we have zero intention. Let me be clear. We have zero intentions of trading Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson and his camp say they want to get a deal done. They also said that they want to break the bank. but they said they want to get a deal done with the Vikings. No one in their camp, no one in the Vikings organization is putting out there that he wants to leave. So, where's the narrative coming from? Guys like Mike Florio is coming on air trying to talk about how the Vikings tried to get Malik Neighbors, which is true, but why are you bringing it up now? Oh, they want Justin Jefferson out of Minnesota bad. They want him out of Minnesota bad. I can taste it. They want it and guaranteed. And I don't believe this is going to happen because I believe Justin Jefferson is going to sign right before the start of the season. But I guarantee you, if Justin Jefferson does leave the Minnesota Vikings, he's not going to a mid-market team because that's not where they want him. The manipulative ways of the media. Justin Jefferson is not going to sign with the Minnesota Vikings. That's the narrative that's getting put out there. And I'm telling you, you can book this. He is going to sign with the Minnesota Vikings before the season starts. So all of this talk about him not signing can dry up. You can't fall for the okie doke. Giannis Antetokounmpo for the Milwaukee Bucks. I remember him saying, you know what, I love Milwaukee. I want to get it done in Milwaukee. I want a championship in Milwaukee. This is what I want. I love this place. Since they won a championship, they've had a couple of seasons, not bad seasons, but seasons where they've come up a little bit short. And the narrative gets stronger and stronger. Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Knicks. That's the landing spot. I don't know why the New York Knicks, who haven't been anything for years, for decades, is this landing spot for all these superstar athletes. They're always rumored to be going to the Knicks. And a lot of it starts with guys like Stephen A. Smith, who are New York born and cover the sport. And he's the face of the NBA when it comes to ESPN. He starts these narratives, man. And these narratives are not out there. He claims to be well connected, but these narratives are not out there. That's your wish list. You want these players to end up in New York or these mid-market teams. The one thing I give Stephen A. credit for is at least he doesn't lie about it. Like he has with other things, he'll tell you straight up, I don't like going to these cold weather places for the playoffs. I want to be in South Beach. I want to be in La La. But he'll go to cold weather places when it comes to the New York Knicks. He don't mind walking into Madison Square Garden in the NBA Finals when it comes to the New York Knicks. So don't believe the okie doke, man. All of this trade talk and getting rid of Karl Anthony Towns. And again, I'm not steadfast on keeping Karl Anthony Towns if we can improve the team. But the Minnesota Timberwolves have shown a history of getting rid of their prime time players when we get them. Stephon Marbury, Kevin Love, Kevin Garnett, Randy Moss, Chris Carter. Do you remember who we got for those players when they left? Give me one name. Who did we get when we lost Randy Moss? Who did we get when we lost Kevin Love? Who did we get when we lost Stephon Marbury? And where did they go when they left Minnesota? Was their situation better than what they had in Minnesota? Fans of Minnesota, don't fall for the okie doke. Don't fall for the okie doke. Don't listen to asinine trade rumors that don't make sense. We got something special here in Minnesota. We got the organization in place with the Minnesota Vikings. Let them do their thing. And the Minnesota Timberwolves are in the Western Conference Finals. Let's build on this and stop throwing away assets for nothing, because that's what we've done in the past. That's what we've done in the past. This has been Unconventional Playbook. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back to do a preview of Game 5, Minnesota Timberwolves Dallas Mavericks series. Can we get one at home? That's what I want to see. This has been Unconventional Playbook. See you when I see you.
Powered by Riverside.